There are two important questions to ask here inside of all of this. First of all, how did we get here? Now, I've discussed that at length in the past, so I won't dwell on that one too much, but I will recap it. Secondly, why is this continuing to happen? Why is it happening now? Why is it continuing to happen? Why is it not ending? And that's what I'm really going to focus on tonight, and I'm going to take it a lot further this time than I have in the past. The why. Everyone wants to now know the why. Even the average American chud, which is probably most of you swine in chat, most of you absolute goy scum in chat, finally are probably now dragging yourselves to my feet, and you're saying, please, American advocates, explain to me why. I trusted in Trump, and I thought he was playing 5D chess with Iran and China, and it's just not ending well. Why is this happening? I don't understand. Please enlighten me. That's what I'm here to do. And here's really what's happening here. Trump himself is seemingly becoming more and more agitated, not just with Iran, but with many of our allies, including Israel. And even perhaps he's getting agitated, I think, more and more internally within his own administration and many of his cabinet members and senior advisors and officials. 3 weeks ago, and this is the sign right here, I think one of the signs when it comes to Trump, when it comes to buyer's remorse, regret, agitation, frustration, and in my opinion, what is amounting to desperation, which is never good. But desperation now is defining Trump. He signed that MOU. It's a surrender document. Of course he has cold feet on it. Of course he has buyer remorse on the MOU. Of course he's violating it. He basically wants it to end. But 3 weeks ago, he made a reference to Herbert Hoover, saying that he doesn't want to be remembered as Herbert Hoover is remembered. And for all of you idiots in chat who don't know who Herbert Hoover was essentially the president that's marked with and associated the most with the Great Depression of the United States, the worst economic times. And Trump knows then, since he's making these references, that this is getting bad. He wouldn't say that otherwise. Trump in the past has talked about Andrew Jackson, Ronald Reagan, the heroes, Abe Lincoln. When Trump was campaigning, those were the presidents he talked about. Now that he's caught with his pants at below his ankles in this war with no way out, it's all a disaster, and both sides are playing tug of war with him. Now he's mentioning Herbert Hoover, the Great Depression president, basically. And that means he knows it's getting bad, and therefore he also then knows what's at stake here. Trump is not being led astray. Trump he is cognitive still. I don't believe he has dementia like Biden does. He is cognitive, and he knows what he's risking then by continuing this, but he does it anyway. Why? And this brings me really to what I want to talk about tonight. Manipulation and ego, because that's almost certainly what's at stake here behind the scenes. That's what's at play here behind the scenes, and this is what happened. This is what is happening. There's been a massive shift in Trump himself since really back in 2016. Trump in 2016 would have never made these poor of decisions. He was a much different person. And truly, in 2015 and 2016, he was a force to be reckoned with. I compare him all the time to a Wolverine, the animal, the Wolverine. He has this attitude that coincides with a Wolverine when it comes to his ego. It's very defensive, but also simultaneously very, very aggressive and very, very quick to respond in the most aggressive manners. Back then, this attitude of Trump's, this Wolverine-like spirit of him, was so atypical, meaning not typical, of the other Republican politicians around him at the time or in the past, that liberals and globalists were startled by it, truthfully, and also couldn't figure it out. They would mistakenly try to fight him face to face, and they'd attack his ego, and they'd call him dumb, and they would basically come at him and try to bombard him with news stories that were not flattering and criticisms that made him angry, and it just made it worse for them. Because Trump's attitude, Trump's Wolverine-like spirit protects his ego. But that all changed in 2021. Biden's presidency, in all honesty, began the shift. Whether or not it's legitimate that Biden won the election in 2021, and I think everybody is very right to question that, his administration nonetheless was used to weaponize the law system against Trump and punish him, truthfully, for grandstanding. against the globalist agenda, against the military-industrial complex, against the elites, against the Zionists, all of it. All of those who pull the strings were enraged at Trump's presidency, and they were angered by it. And so in 2021, after Biden takes the office, Trump is now the most vulnerable that he ever has been, and he becomes subjected to lawfare, basically, being punished by the globalists and the elites. They shattered his world. They threatened to destroy him and his entire family during all of this. He's dragged through court. His empire is on the line. His wife's work is being destroyed before his very eyes. They come after his children. They threaten to throw his son in prison. They threaten to throw him in prison for life, take his money away from him. And it's at this moment, truthfully, that they conquered Trump. They did conquer him, in my opinion. Out of desperation, and this is where we see the effects of it. Out of desperation, somewhere around the year 2023, we see President Donald Trump in 2023/2024 decide to run for president again. This is his meal ticket out, by the way, at this point, and he knows it. And this is where we really see him take and decide, make life-altering decisions in the form of taking hundreds of millions of dollars, what would become hundreds of millions of dollars, from figures like Miriam Adelson, who's an Israeli Zionist nationalist bitch, really. That's Miriam Adelson. She's Israel first. She's an Israeli nationalist. She's a Zionist. She's loaded because she's the widow of Sheldon Adelson. She offers him hundreds of millions of dollars in, I think, late 2023, 2024, obviously to go towards a campaign for Trump to run for president again. And he needs the money this time because he refused to take this money, by the way, in 2015. He didn't take it. Not only did he not take it, but he refused to and called it out. He said Marco Rubio would be just a puppet to Miriam Adelson because of how much money she has spent on Marco. He said that little Marco, he'll be a puppet of the Sheldon Adelson and Miriam Adelson. He'll be a puppet. You don't want to vote for little Marco. He's short, he's tiny, he's insignificant, and he takes their money. He'll just be a puppet of the Adelsons, he said. That's what he said. And he literally, in that first campaign, he took like an insignificant amount from them. Being a billionaire, he didn't need their money. He goes in front of at the podium in front of the stage at the debates, receives boos from all of the Zionists, from all of the elites, all of the Israeli Zionists and the big donors, the wealthy Jews in attendance, AIPACers. And he says, they're booing me because I don't need their money. I don't need it. But in 2023, they had him exactly where they wanted him this time. He was weak from the lawfare, and he was on the verge of ruination. And truthfully, in my opinion, desperate to win back the presidency, like I said, because it is his meal ticket. He needed the massive amounts of money, though, to ensure a winning campaign in order to reclaim the presidential office. And so in taking this money, he guarantees the win, essentially. The media starts to become slightly more favorable to him. He's now loaded with the money needed to run a winning campaign, which he does. But really, this begins the process going forward of the manipulation and control over him that I believe we are now seeing play out in full effect. It's all taking form in this Iran war. Not only did they essentially buy him during this time, by the way, but they also learned, this is also important, they can buy him, and they bought the war, clearly. Miriam Adelson paid for this war, make no mistake about that. But the ego is still a problem always with Trump. And what I'm seeing when it comes to Trump internally in his administration, who he's surrounded with, I am seeing, in my opinion, an administration this time around that is not only no better than the first administration, the first Trump administration, where everyone said, I love Trump, but he picked all of the wrong people, John Bolton, all of these people. Well, this time, he's also picked horrendous people. Some of them are stupid. I think Pete Hegseth kind of is dumb. Very loyal and admirably so, but kind of dumb, I think, in my opinion. Hegseth's a Zionist. He wants to help Israel build their third temple. He's just an idiot. He doesn't know how to read his Bible right. He's clearly not smart when it comes to military strategy and his ideas. Hegseth is still for this war when most of the Trump administration, I think, has soured on it. There's incompetency, Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem. And then there's the manipulators. And there seems to be a lot of those. And really it comes back to his ego, because I think this administration is full of manipulators who have figured out Trump's ego. Unlike in his first term, like I said, where the ego of Trump is protected by that Wolverine-like attitude, The Wolverine-like attitude allows Trump to punch well above his weight class. He strikes ferociously at all forms of criticism. And this time around, what I think is more evident than anything is they have simply learned to not criticize him. Instead of leaning against the ego, they lean into it. And so, really, what I think is happening here is they've learned you don't fight the Wolverine, you put it on a leash and you point it at your enemies and you watch it go to town. It doesn't matter if it can win, you literally just leash it and say, see that? Go fight it. You don't insult it for being small, you praise it for being ferocious, and you even call it smart. You point it. You point to the tiger, and you don't say, "Hey, you're stupid if you think you can challenge that tiger." Instead, you put it on a leash, and then you say, "Because you're so smart and powerful and ferocious and cunning and clever, there's no way that tiger could stand up to you." I bet you already know this, don't you? I bet you were already planning on taking out that tiger because you can, weren't you? And I'll tell you what, I agree with you. You are so smart. That's what you do. You should take out that. They've learned this. It's a 180-degree approach, and I'm convinced that not only is that happening behind the scenes, but that it's happening and working nearly every time. Because this is the mistake of a lifetime. And not only was it Miriam Adelson's money that bought the war, but it was also, I think, the messaging, and it was the salesmanship that convinced Trump to do it. They have figured him out, and now they are just utilizing him as a pawn, singing his praises rather than sending criticism his way. The manipulation patterns, in my opinion, are evident, by the way, with this Iran war. Think about it like this. Let me take a sip of water here, because I've been talking about this for a while. Trump pulls off a successful operation in Venezuela back in January. I approve of that operation here on this channel. That's what foreign policy should look like. I say it all the time. Monroe Doctrine in effect. Crush Venezuela. Take their oil. Rid their country of Chinese presence. Do it. Get rid of their foreign leader. I don't care about that. That's our Western Hemisphere, and America is the superpower of the West. Canada relies on us. Central America relies on us. South America relies on us. We are in control by default. That's good foreign policy. However, the mission is successful. Trump's praises are being sung. And what do we see not long after that? We see Benjamin Netanyahu visit the White House a few weeks after. And according to all reports that we know, sells Trump on this Iran war in the Situation Room that Benjamin Netanyahu should have never been invited to sit in, by the way. No foreign leader should ever be in our Situation Room, but he was. He sells Trump on the war by reportedly, though Benjamin Netanyahu denied this in his 60 Minutes interview, or kind of dodged around answering it truthfully, but kind of denied it. But reportedly, in that room, he drew conclusions to Trump of Iran being like a Venezuela 2.0. Mr. Trump, you were so brilliant, and you succeeded in Venezuela. Iran, Mr. Trump, we have our Mossad intelligence and our IDF intelligence. It is the equivalent of 5 of your CIA, sir. You know that, sir. And so our intelligence is always accurate, and it says, sir, that Iran is ripe for regime change. It'll be just like Venezuela 2.0. Besides, it's time to come fight and die for Israel, you goy. That's essentially what happens. Now, Trump, of course, agrees to it. The war goes horrendously. It's embarrassing for America in many ways. Ruins our reputation, like I said. Jeopardizes the Pax Americana. Destroys our military credibility. Rids the world of this illusion that America can conquer anybody at any moment's notice. The Venezuela operation was amazing, by the way. We kidnapped a world leader in like 2 hours, and within 12 hours, not even, he was in a New York City prison cell, an entire world leader. You want to put the world and the government and the world leaders on notice? That's how you do it. But you got to leave well enough alone, and he doesn't. And that's what's even more sad, is he then goes and it's sold by Benjamin Netanyahu on an unwinnable, horrendous war, and not only undoes all of the Venezuela success and credibility earned from it, but actually just digs a deficit so deep that it is now changing the world forever. And it's horrendous. But Israel continues, by the way. Israel continues to manipulate and pull the strings in the Middle East. They do this by attacking Lebanon when we're trying to work out peace with Iran, and Iran continues on insisting that Israel stops attacking and advancing in Lebanon. They continue to keep tensions high, Israel does, by doing this. They're sabotaging peace outright and deliberately, obvious enough for all to see, but without any care. And they force the United States in doing so to choose sides. And naturally, at least for a while, Trump continues to take the side of Israel, saying one thing on Truth Social about Israel will stop, and then the next day saying, after statements are made public in Israel that they won't stop, Trump then comes out the next day and says, it's not, Israel's separate, what's going on with Lebanon is different, this is between the US and Iran. And even when Trump eventually forces peace by signing the surrender document known as the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran, we still continue to see Israel not only test the red lines mentioned in Section 1 about Lebanon by bombing Lebanon still, but we also see signs of deeper manipulation happening. The MOU is clear that Iran will control the Strait of Hormuz in the future. I read Section 5 to you earlier tonight. It's clear, and Trump signed it, effectively agreeing to it. Yet all of a sudden, now what we see, and this is my main point in all of this, all of a sudden what we see now over the course of the last 2 or so weeks, and especially this past week, is the United States now began to take a hardline stance against Iran controlling the strait. And I think it's clear as a result of this continual schizophrenic kind of action from Trump and in his decision-making process, I think it's clear that someone behind the scenes, probably multiple people, are in Trump's ears making these kind of suggestions that manipulate Trump. I think it could be as obvious as them saying stuff like this, again, appealing to the ego and everything else. Sir, peace with Iran is great, but you just can't let them control the strait, though. You can't let them. It's a bad look, sir. These suggestions aren't being made to help people, by the way. It's literally being made to restoke the flames that is the Iran war. So think about it like this. We are almost on the verge of peace with the MOU. It's signed. It's a surrender document, but it looks like at least there's a chance now for Trump to just withdraw from the Middle East region, focus on domestic issues back at home, and maybe even recover some of the economy here in the United States for the midterm elections. But then all of a sudden, Trump decides, you know what? No, Iran can't control the Strait of Hormuz. We can't allow that. It's manipulation. And really, it's manipulation designed to recognize the position that they're in. They recognize that they're losing some ground with Trump. Israel itself recognizes that they've lost pretty much all favorability with America in the future, certainly. And even though they're losing favorability with Trump, I've explained in the past that Iran is playing 5D chess against Israel, using Trump as their pawn, and it is working. There is a massive divide, increasingly so, between Trump and Netanyahu, between America and Israel, between other countries and Israel. That is why Iran is so hell-bent on listing Israel as a problem in the MOU in Section 1. Lebanon is mentioned 3 times in Section 1 of the MOU, the first paragraph, with the insistency that Israel stops, because every time Israel continues, it exposes Israel as being a filthy, warmongering synagogue of Satan. So all of this is happening, and internally in the Trump administration, you have to be aware it's filled with manipulators that are hardcore Zionists and Israel firsters. So they recognize, okay, it seems like nothing can stop Trump's attitude right now when it comes to wanting peace and to exit the region. How do we try to convince him in the moment, wrongfully so? This is bad advice that he's receiving, but I'm convinced it's happening this way. And the thought process is, well, if we can convince him and play to his ego about the Strait of Hormuz, how it's not a symbolic win, and in fact it's a loss for Trump and for America to allow Iran to control the Strait of Hormuz. If we can convince him that, oh, peace is great, but you gotta open up the strait. You can't allow Iran to control it. With the full recognition, no doubt, that Iran is a hardline for the strait now. They will not give up control, and they intend fully on controlling it and charging a toll, which means it violates a red line of Iran. But they say this to Trump, and it works. And it convinces Trump to now take the hardline stance in opposition to Iran, which does what? It unravels the peace. It unravels the entire process. It spikes tensions back up, and in those tensions, more shit happens. Tankers get struck. The U.S. goes back to bombing Iran. The MOU is now basically both sides are like, well, what good is it? Let's just tear it up. And when that happens, it's back to war. This is the pattern that keeps playing out. It's why we continually see this schizo-like behavior from Trump. Peace, then strikes, then peace, then strikes. It's because, truthfully, he's being, in my opinion, manipulated to some degree. And also, like I've stated in the past, I think the theory still holds at least somewhat true that these ceasefires may in fact just be reload periods, and intentionally so. Because perhaps both sides don't actually really even want peace to begin with. But what we're seeing now, too, is more manipulation unfolding in the form of the other story I want to cover today, and that's this alleged assassination plot that was now foiled by Israel. An assassination plot apparently was attempted to be carried out against Trump from Iran. They want to now apparently assassinate the president. And this could very well be true. I'm not even here to tell you that it's definitely not true. This could very well be true. But regardless of the truth behind it or not, and I'll tell you this, I have serious doubts on it being true. This is literally just more manipulation as well. Or at least it's being used in the form of more manipulation, in my opinion. Because look what this has led to. We hear this report that Trump is at the NATO summit and he's hell-bent on using the Qatari jet that they gifted him as the new Air Force One. It's filled with luxurious gold plating and furniture inside of it and everything else. And, you know, he says, oh, the Air Force is a little outdated and the Qataris, they love Trump, the Qataris, and they gave me this Qatar Force One. So he flies on it. But in doing so, and in being insistent on that, it's not actually designed to be as defensive and safe and protective of him while he's overseas. And then we get this news report that, oh my God, your life's in jeopardy. This is Israeli intelligence being fed to him. And so they emergency land Qatar Force One in Britain, where he deboards it and then boards Air Force One and continues in his travels. This has led to more bombing in Iran, though, which has resulted in closure of the strait, and now Trump is reportedly eyeing up more military action in Kharg Island. He's outraged at the idea that Iran may want to assassinate him. And again, there could be a lot of truth to that. When you look at what we've done to Iran, we struck them first. We struck them first unprovoked on February 28th. We bombed a school by accident that we'd never apologized for, and it killed 107 children. We destroyed their entire government. If you really want to understand what this would be like as an American, imagine you wake up tomorrow, despite being, if you're liberal or Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter, however your feelings are on it, imagine you wake up tomorrow to news that a massive bombing run campaign was carried out on the United States. Somehow, Iran got a hold of all of these fighter jets, gifted from Russia, let's say. You wake up tomorrow and the White House is destroyed, Trump is dead, J.D. Vance is dead, Marco Rubio is dead, Pete Hegseth is dead. All of his administrative officials are mostly dead. Just like that in the blink of an eye. And in addition to that, let's say the Pope was visiting the White House at the time and he's dead too. All gone in the blink of an eye. Now we have whoever's next in line, Speaker Mike Johnson, God forbid, would become president, I guess. That would be horrendous. Obviously, what we would do going forward is we would say, fuck Iran, we will destroy them. Flip the tables back, that's what happened in Iran, but they're not actually powerful enough to go head-to-head against our military. So instead, they're adopting a different strategy when it comes to destroying us. They're bleeding us dry. They can't fight us one-on-one. Our Navy's better, our Air Force is superior, and it shows. But instead, they now just spitefully want to bleed us dry. They want to drag this on as long as possible, like I've alluded to before. And when it comes to bleeding us dry, I'll get to that in a second. But really, that's what's happening as a result. And Trump is being manipulated into continually stoking the flames that is Iran's anger. And it's working so much so that now he's talking about Kharg Island, reportedly, allegedly.